Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started around 8 a.m. Just want to let you all know that today's webinar will be recorded, and that recording has started right now. Good morning, everyone. For those of you who did not hear, today's training will be recorded and it will be sent out to you all today. Just want to let you all know. But good morning and welcome to the HCM Modernization Webinar Training Series. My name is Sierra Wells. I'm with Accenture and I'll be your training producer for today. As you all are aware, the state of Indiana has implemented an updated version of PeopleSoft 9.2. And with this implementation, there have been a few updated business processes and adjustments to your daily tasks. So we want to make sure you all are aware and informed of these updates and are confident moving forward. So PeopleSoft is going to make a lot of your daily tasks much more manageable and efficient. So we're excited for today for you all to learn all the great stuff and all these new updates. So today's webinar is specifically focused on human resource centralized and non-centralized employees. So if you are not a part of these two groups, now is the time to drop the call. So just some quick housekeeping rules before we go ahead and get started. The duration of today's training will be about 4 hours. There will be 2 to 3 5-minute breaks throughout the training. And throughout these breaks, you are welcome to stretch, check your emails, and grab a quick snack, whatever you need to feel refreshed. Please make sure throughout the presentation your mics are on mute unless we are on a questions portion after each section, or if the facilitator for today mentions that it's time to, ask some questions. During the question time frame, you are welcome to utilize the hand raising Teams feature to signify you would like to ask a question. And once you are either called on by myself or the facilitator, you're welcome to hop off and mute to ask a question. But besides that, if you're not speaking, please make sure your microphone remains on mute. Throughout the presentation, you are encouraged to be interactive within the chat to ask questions and to make any relevant comments. We will be monitoring the chat to answer your questions. And if there is a question that requires some confirmation on our end, we will be sending out a summary of answers after this webinar, along with hosting a live question and answer session on the 25th for you all. This is optional. However, we do encourage you to join if you have any outstanding questions after today's webinar. Your agency will also be providing a data entry reference guide on the JAM site within the core HR job aid folder that you can reference after today's webinar that will have some information on navigation as well as just data overall. So we encourage you to look at that after today's webinar. We also encourage you all to take detailed and meaningful notes for you to look back on and to jot down any questions you would like to ask either during today's webinar or during the live question and answer portion on the 25th. And last but certainly not least, please participate. This is meant to be interactive. If you think of a question, I'm sure someone else may be thinking the same exact thing. So please interact within the chat, ask questions, and make any relevant comments related to the material that we'll be going over today. We want this session to be as interactive as possible. Next, on to optional live captions. You will have the option to utilize the live captioning feature on Teams today. In order to access this feature, first select the More icon at the top of your Teams screen. You should see it. It has 3 horizontal dots at the top of your page. Once you select that, next scroll down and select Turn on Live Captions. After you select this, you should then see live captions start to display at the bottom of your screen. For whatever reason, if you would like to turn off live captions, if you selected this, you can walk through the same exact process and then just select turn off live captions if you would like to turn it off. So that's an option for you all today. And next, on to training team introductions. So our main training facilitator for today will be Jeff Wolting, and he will also be assisted by some subject matter experts. So I'm going to go ahead and allow all of them to introduce themselves quickly if they are on the call. So Jeff, do you want to head off and mute really quick to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, everybody. For those that you don't know, my name is Jeff Wolting. I'm the Data Division Director in State Personnel and the Core HR functional analyst, so to speak.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. We're excited for today. Next on to our subject matter experts. Marcy, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Hi, good morning. This is Marcy Radio. I'm a deputy in field operations for state personnel, and I will be here today to advise on issues related to HR.
Thank you, Marcy. Ashley, are you on the call?
I am. Hi, I'm Ashley New. I am the Shared Services and HR Data Manager here at State Personnel.
Thank you, Ashley. Jordan? Okay, not sure if Jordan's on the call today. Brandy, are you on the call?
I am. Hi, this is Brandy Hooten. I'm with GMIS to provide support for anything you guys need for HR.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandy. And again, Sierra Wells, I'm here with Accenture, and I will be your producer for today. Next, on to webinar core audience. Again, this webinar is specifically designed for individuals in human resources with centralized and non-centralized roles. If this does not include you, kindly please drop the call, even though we enjoy your company. We don't want to waste anyone's time. Then next, on to the course overview for today. Within this webinar, we will be discussing two main topics: Smart HR templates, a feature within PeopleSoft, and the second section will be fluid position data, fluid job data, managing personal data, and approvals. So that's going to be the bulk of the information that we go over today. Today's agenda. So today's agenda will be broken down into three main sections, and this is just an estimated schedule for time. First, we'll be going through the introduction, which we're walking through right now. Then we'll be walking through Smart HR, which is broken down into several sections, which will last about 90 minutes. And then we'll conclude today's session with fluid position data, fluid job data, personal data, managing the data, and approvals. Again, you all will have either 2 to 3 5-minute breaks throughout today's presentation to just refresh, grab some water, whatever you need to do to stay focused. And lastly, upon completion of this webinar, you should be able to process Smart HR templates and understand how to add, update, and manage position, personal, and job data. So with that being said, I'm going to hand the mic over to today's facilitator, Jeff Wolting.
Thank you, Sierra. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Jeff Wolting. I'm a state personnel. I want to briefly describe kind of the things that we're going to get into today. But before I do, I want to let you know that for 9.2, we have totally redesigned security and security roles, mainly around in order to ensure that we can future date transactions without interfering with security today. So a lot of what you'll hear today when it comes to security roles and access to the stuff that you see today, if you had access in 9.1 to do data entry, you will have access to do everything I show today. I will tell you that throughout this presentation today, for non-centralized agencies, we're using the same slide deck that we did for centralized agencies. So if you see the term approval or hit the approve button, please realize that most of the time for you guys, it's more along the lines of submitting for review. So I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, and I want to make sure you guys understand that approval doesn't necessarily mean approval. It could also mean just review of that transaction. Also, Sierra mentioned it, and it's in the chat for that data entry guide. We have totally revamped our data entry guide. Some of you guys may have seen it from 9.1. It is now a lot more extensive and includes all of the new payroll and absence management data fields that you'll need to know when you're doing data entry today. Today, I will not be talking about how to do data entry, but more to make sure that you guys know the method, the path, and the navigation to complete your work. Now, also, you've heard the term Smart HR template. We also call them Smart HR forms. These are replacing what we now today know as the PPAF form. So instead of typing onto an Excel sheet and sending it, that PPAF form to HR data, you're going to be typing directly into the system. If you do it into job data, you'll still be doing it in job data. It'll just have an additional review step. And then benefits, we also have built in all the eligibility rules into 9.2 for all the business plans. All right, next slide, Sierra. So today we call it position data. In 9.2, they call it fluid. You'll hear that term fluid quite a bit. Fluid just means the tiles on the home pages or the desktops, and they move by looking at their cell phones. So when you hear the term fluid, you'll know that it's one of the tiles you need to navigate to versus the classic menu. There is fluid job data and fluid position data, and we'll be talking about those throughout the demonstration today. All right, next slide. While we won't be covering it today, I do want to mention that there is a job aid on how to add I-9 information into PeopleSoft, mainly for reporting and tracking purposes, and that job aid is located in SuccessFactors in the JAM section. Okay. So Smart HR. What are Smart HR forms? Well, we're going to be talking for about the first 90 minutes on Smart HR forms and how to submit quick actions, basically. Next slide. Smart HR. So throughout the presentation today, we'll be talking about job data, position data, and personal data. Hopefully, most of you on the call understand these three sections. Smart HR forms can update job data and personal data. And I'll say that again. Smart HR template forms can update job data and personal data. And we'll talk about how to update position later on. But for right now, for fluid job or for Smart HR templates, it's job data and personal data. All right, next slide. When you're adding a new hire into the PeopleSoft system, you have to have all the necessary information for job data, position data, personal data. So make sure that in 9.2 you have all that information ready to go prior to doing your data entry. And we will talk a little bit about how the position data affects job data and how job data affects personal data. All right, next slide. Okay, so here we're going to be talking about how to navigate to Smart HR templates, or Smart HR forms, as I call them. On the Manager Self-Service home screen, you'll see some tiles, but for Smart HR forms, they're not on tiles. They're actually in the classic menu. So you'll see here on the screenshot here that you will go to, on the main menu, you go to Workforce Administration, Smart HR Template, and next slide. And when you click that, they'll give you the option to submit Smart HR forms. Again, those replace PPAS. You'll be doing your hiring through these smart forms, and they will route to the state personnel for review. And you'll start to understand why, because now that we have the payroll system in PeopleSoft, we have implemented a lot of just a quick checks and balances, so that way we can eliminate the possibility of an employee not getting a paycheck with all the new payroll fields. So there's a lot of review steps in 9.2 that we've built in just to make sure that there's a second pair of eyes before it hits payroll. All right, next slide. So here's the nav bar again: Workforce Administration, Smart HR Template, and then next slide. There will be three options there. The third one is for HR data, but everybody here will have the first two. The first two will be Smart HR Transactions. That's how you submit them. There'll be Transaction Status. That's how you review your transactions to see if they're still pending with us or if we've completed them. And Manage Transactions is how HR data reviews those transactions and corrects any errors or issues. All right. So now we're going to talk about how to submit Smart HR templates. When you click on that, you'll be brought to a search screen such as this, and we'll be demonstrating this here in a little bit. There are several search options, but use the lookup icon next to select template. There's only a few templates. We haven't created a whole lot of forms in 9.2. When you click this lookup icon, you will see the smart forms available to you. Next slide. Here's a list of all of the smart forms we've created. Not one person will have all of these forms. These forms are based upon your security assignments in PeopleSoft that we've built for 9.2. You will complete these transactions, and then they will be submitted to HR data again for review. Most of the time, just to make sure that the correct payroll fields have been filled out and that there's no conflicting data being entered into our system. All right, next slide. We have broken these forms, as you can see, and we'll show again here in a little bit, the naming convention into employee and contractor. So the forms that have the CWR are for contractors, EMP are for employee forms. When you complete this template, again, it'll route to HR data, state personnel, and based upon the form, we will review various different fields. Next slide. So majority of our time is going to be spent in PeopleSoft actually showing you how to go back and forth in the new system. So I'm going to take over the share, Sierra. Let me get logged into the system. I'm going to change screens here. Okay, when I log into the system, I am logged in as myself. Your view may be slightly different, but the navigation is still the same. So for Smart HR templates, I'm again going to go to the navigation bar, go to Navigator, Workforce Administration, Smart HR template, Smart HR transactions. Here's the search feature that comes up. Based upon your security, when you use the lookup feature for select template, you will see the Smart HR forms you have been permissioned for. We will be demonstrating a few of these today, but I want to go ahead and just kind of run through quickly each of the smart forms and what they are for. For centralized agencies, this is for our success factors. This is the form we use to bring employees over from success factors to PeopleSoft. That's more of a system behind the scenes form. Nobody will have access to that. First, I'll talk about the contractor forms. And certain individuals that we have permissioned as contractor coordinators will have access to the CWR forms. In order to add a contractor to the system, you would just simply click the hire contractor form, fill out the fields, and send it to HR data for review. There's also forms to update the phone, email address, and home address. To term a contractor, you simply do the SOI term contractor. I'll quickly click on one of these so you can see what a Smart HR form looks like. So I've selected my template. I will click Create Transaction. It will ask me for my employee ID. If I know if it's a previous contractor, I could do that, but I'm going to leave it here. The effective date. Hit Continue. And here is a Smart HR form. What it does is it combines personal data, such as name, date of birth, with the information down below of job data. So what business unit that contractor is in, all in one place. As you can see, for contractors, we defaulted the job code to non-EMP, and we'll have the supervisor ID. Fields with asterisks are required. So I will quickly put a name here. So we're dealing with the contractor. I'll do a driver's license number. Luckily with contractors now, we have this expected end date that we'll be able to fill out. So we can have an estimate of when that contractor probably should be out of the system. This will help in keeping track of when to inactivate contractors in the new system. Hopefully everybody here is used to using these. Oh. Establishment ID should always be the same, but we couldn't default it. EMP. Thomas, I will state that throughout the webinar this morning, if you see a comment section or a note section, please use comments. If for some reason a smart HR form or a transaction errors out, it will flow to HR data to review. If we have comments here stating what you're trying to do, and we might be able to fix it for you rather than coming back and trying to figure out what's going on. Hit submit. I now have my personal ID. Are there any questions so far about the contractor form? Awfully quiet. Okay. I will return, I'll show that list again of the other forms that we have. So for non-centralized agencies, SOI Hire EMP will be the main form that you guys will use, called the non-success factors Hire Smart Form. So I'll jump into that one. I'll select my template. I'll create transaction. If you know the employee ID, if it's a returning employee, you put it in here. If not, leave it new. And you'll notice it's a lot of the same fields. What I do want to point out to you is that there are new fields that you will be required to fill out that you didn't in 9.1, such as Payroll Pay Group. You guys are used to using SOI today. Here are the pay groups that we now have in 9.2. In that data entry guide, we describe when to use each one of these and why. So for instance, if it's a judge, you got to have the judge pay group. Employee type. Most employees will be exception hourly. If they are not subject to time and labor, it'll be salaried. Again, in our data entry guide, we go through each one of these values. Tax location code. That is the county that the employee lives in for taxation purposes. So if their address shows that they're in Marion County up here or Adams County and I didn't change it, you need to select that county that they need to be taxed at. If they're utilizing absence management, you will have to utilize the absence management pay group. Even though they may not be using absence management, you still need to select it because that criteria rules them out.
Why would they not be using absence management?
If they are, then use it. I'm not a functional analyst with the absence management.
Not everyone is enrolled in absence management. It just depends on the type of employee and the agency that they're for.
Correct.
Jeff, in the pay group, you had one for the second one, Excise and Conservation Office.
Yep.
Would that be everybody that works in DNR law enforcement, or would that just be the sworn officers?
I refer you to the data entry guide for all of these because it explicitly says when to use each one of these for your agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Jeff, Hannah Rosenberger has a question in the chat. How do I know if we're a contract coordinator, and how can we designate new team members to be contractor coordinators?
Sure. For 9.2, we went ahead and permissioned based upon the email that I'd sent out to various agencies that if you submitted contractors in the past, we permissioned you for the contractor forms in the future. So that way, because today they're done via IoT tickets. So we took everybody that had submitted tickets before and made sure they had access to 9.2. If somebody doesn't have access and needs to be a contractor coordinator or have that access, just submit an IoT ticket to GMIS and they will permission you for that role. It does need to go through an agency security coordinator for your agency though. Comp rate code you guys are used to using. These are very similar. And then the BAS group. The BAS groups have changed. We have a lot less than we did in 9.1. Here are the 9.2 values. Are there any questions about the hire form and the new values? All right, I'm going to return back and cancel out. When you enter in that new hire form, the system will look for name matches, possible social matches, possible date of birth. If there are no matches, the form will go through. If there are possible matches, that's when HR data is going to review to see if there's already an instance in the system. If so, we will connect that employee ID to the person you're trying to hire, or if it's going to be a transfer, we will transfer them for you. So therefore, what the smart form will do is we'll do a name match, possible date of birth, and social match to see if they're already in the system. And if they are, it'll route to HR data. Okay. What we also have now are we have these smaller forms for updating employee information. So for instance, I have SOI, phone number, email, address. I'll quickly show you one of these. Let's do address. Again, you will select the employee ID number. Let me grab one real quick here. Let me go grab somebody. Grab an SCM. With the effective date. And what you'll notice is it's a quick way to only change the information that you are trying to change. If on modify a person there's already a business address, it will just add a new effective date row over business with this new address, and so that way you'll see the old address and then the new address that you put in here. Every employee has to have a home type address. So the hire form will automatically create a home address from their hire form. This would be how you would add in additional addresses or make modifications. All fields on Smart HR forms need to be filled out. If they are not, they will be blank. So for instance, if you are just trying to change the county, you still need to fill out the entire address. If you don't, it will be blanked out and modify a person. So if an employee's address is correct, but the county is wrong, retype the whole address, change just the county. I'll show you the other forms as well. So same thing for phone number. Phone type, phone number, comments, save. Any questions so far? In 9.1 today, we have certain groups of individuals that are currently persons of interest, not employees by state personnel standard in 9.1. However, they receive paychecks through AOS Therefore, they get W-2s. So for 9-2, we are converting those to what we call W-2 only employees. W-2 only employees are employees such as board members, student workers, patients, inmates who aren't on our benefits, like I said, get a paycheck and therefore have to have a W-2. They are differentiated from other employees in the system based upon the employee classification dropdown stating W-2 only. So if your agency has a board member or individual that falls in that category, you will use the Smart Hire W-2 only form. For terming employees and contractors, it's real easy. Enter in the employee ID. The record number will automatically default. The date you want to term. Last day worked. And submit. This form does not route to HR data for review and goes through instantly. Any questions on Smart HR so far? And I'll show the navigation here again. So it's Navigator, Workforce Administration, Smart HR, Smart HR Transactions. Now, I'll say this again, Smart HR forms can update personal data and job data. They can only add to what we call top of stack, which means you cannot correct history with this. You cannot insert rows to older times. These smart forms are designed to be quick and add information to the last effective date. All right, I think one more I probably should talk about is this SOI Personal Data EMP. This is the form to use for employee name changes, social security name corrections, or date of birth corrections. As you will see, the Smart HR form is blank. So you will have to make sure you fill this out exactly how it should be based upon the social security card or what it is in the system and make the required changes here that you need to change. This will route to HR data for review and make sure, and that will allow us to then follow our processes to notify downstream parties such as IoT, benefits if necessary, INPERS to update them as well for these corrections. Yeah, and good point, Marcy. Yes, a lot of these transactions can be done through employee self-service. And we definitely want to encourage employees to do this through employee self-service. Employees can update their own phone numbers, their own email addresses. It's just that we know as HR professionals, sometimes those employees won't do it or don't have the access to do it if they're out in the field and aren't access to a computer. This is just one more way that we can do it for them if for some reason that employee can't do it through employee self-service.
Jeff, I'm not sure if you see the chat, but Pam Douglas has a question. Is there a query that can be run to determine who has made address changes?
Yes. So just so everybody knows, there are audit tables on job data and personal data. Even when people make corrections in that system, we can find out who did it because that audit table tracks every transaction. So if that ever is an issue, we can definitely create a query or get that information to you. And then Kim, yes, if you do not fill out the information, it will come to us as blank. So for address, if you leave any of these lines blank, it will come through to the employee blank. Now, keep in mind that HR data is going to be reviewing all address changes that come through these smart forms because we have to make sure they're in the necessary formats and meet the necessary character limitations for our third-party vendors and such. So for instance, we want to make sure that HR data will make sure there's always something in address line 1. HR data will always make sure that that the postal code matches the county, etc. So should you guys submit only a county change and everything comes to us blank, We're gonna be reaching out to you. Just one, like I said, go ahead.
The reason for that is basically what you're doing is you're asking the system to make a change to the prior record. So if you had something in that field previously and you wanted to remove it, that would be how you would do it. So that's why if you leave blanks on these, the system thinks you're trying to change that information to be gone.
Definitely good questions, guys. I want you to keep it up because this is why we're here today, because it's easier to get these questions now than it is when you're trying to figure this out after go live. Go back to the smart HR forms in case anybody wants to see a specific one again or has questions about a form. There is a FICA form that only AOS will have access to. That's just a quick form for AOS to change the FICA status of an employee. Let's see here. We got the retirement and then the terms we've talked about. So a lot of what we do today in HR data that comes to us via tickets will be done through the system. So HR data should not be getting a whole lot of tickets. Only tickets for that we don't get are for department changes for contractors. So if there's a department change or location change for a contractor, reach out to us via ticket. Otherwise, smart form should cover most of everything. Any other questions? Anybody else see?
Jeff, there's a really sorry. There's a really good question in the chat. When terming an employee as in 9-1 now, we can term them on their last day and it doesn't affect payroll. Will that be true going forward? No. Now when you term an employee in 9.2, it will directly impact payroll.
So you want to make sure that you're clear with their last day worked and then the effective date of the termination. So they should be a day apart typically. And I think you guys are doing that now where their last day worked is, for example, on a Friday, and then their term date, their effective date of the term would be the next day on Saturday.
I'm going to keep pounding it home. If you have questions, it's in that data entry guide. Pam, there's no template for AOS FICA changes. I would get with them to find out what they want you, how they'd like you to submit to them for FICA changes. If you guys have a name or social security, a change, we're still going to ask you, because now that payroll is in our system, we are going to ask for a faxed copy of that SSN card. Today, AOS runs name SSN matches against Department of Revenue to make sure that they are aligned. They want us in state personnel to make sure any changes that we make match exactly what's on the Social Security card. So when you submit this form for the personal data name SSN, we're going to ask you to fax a copy of that Social Security number card to make sure that we are doing exactly what AOS has asked us to do.
Jeff, we have a question in the chat. Would I use the W-2 worker template for summer interns?
W-2. No, if they're paid, they're employees, so you'd still use the higher template. Only certain job codes are used for the W-2 employee, and those job codes listed in the data entry guide.
Yeah, just some examples of those W-2 only folks are people like board members, or if we have, inmates, which probably doesn't apply to this group today, or students, people like that we would have currently categorized as a POI in HCM, because now we're bringing on payroll, they have to be listed as an employee so that they can receive W-2s from us.
Questions? Anything else?
Jeff, does the data entry guide take us through like the steps as far as for a new hire, do this form, do this self-service form, then do a FICA form for any paid employee? I mean, is there a way that a flow for a new employee, the different forms that we would have to do within that guide?
Yes and no. I will tell you this, and you will see this as we get into the other sections of when we get to job data and to position data. There are more than one way to do data entry in the system, as always, right? These forms should be your go-to. If you can't do them here, then we will go into fluid job data where you could do it there as well. But no, there definitely is, like, if it's broken down into transaction type, how to do a hire, how to do a term, how to do a leave, and then it'll tell you what to use.
So within that hire step, it will tell us to do a FICA form for the new hire.
It will not tell you for the FICA. That'll be only AOS will have access to the FICA form, but it will tell you to fill out the new hire EMP form.
Pam, you probably won't have to do the FICA form. That's really just for certain groups of people. I know Pam is on the call today from ISP. That impacts their group quite a lot, but that's really just the exemption from FICA, depending on the status. Most employees will be eligible to have FICA withheld, so.
And definitely, if you guys have not already clicked that link for that data entry guide, just to peruse it, to see it, it's quite extensive. It's 60, 70 some pages. And if it's not in there and you need a clarification, let me know and we'll get added. We're going to keep working on that document to make sure it does have everything you guys need for how to do the data entry. Okay. Last call for smart HR templates. Okay. I think we'll take a quick 5-minute break, guys. When we come back, we're going to get into job data.
Okay, so we're wrapping up our 5-minute break. Jeff, let me know whenever you're ready to go ahead and start back up.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started and kind of go through the slides. And then by the time I get into my demo, hopefully everybody will be back. Okay. So real quick, now that we've submitted Smart HR forms, we did need to show you guys how you can review those transactions that you've submitted. That is the second menu option that you will have right under Smart HR transactions to submit. That will be transaction status. Status page is used to show what's been submitted by you. It will give you a holistic view of all the transactions that are pending, the types, which forms. And if the form is still in the submitted or in process status, you can withdraw that transaction from that menu option. All right, next slide. This is what it looks like. There's the transaction status, and it'll show you can pick your dates, your times, transaction forms, our types, and the action being requested, and see all of the pending or completed transactions. So let's just quickly grab that. Take the chair. Hopefully the ones I did earlier will appear there. So here's the one I did earlier. The status was hired, added, and there was my employee ID. So if you did not happen to grab that employee ID upon when it said it was approved or completed, you could come in here and grab it. Deleting the transactions you'll only want to do that for the in progress ones. The rest of these will just be for your viewing. Any questions on how to view transactions? Again, all that menu is on the navigational bar, and it's right next to where you submit. So you'll have submit HR transactions and transaction status. Manage transactions is where HR data will review transactions that come in. It'll tell us who submitted them, and it will let us know if there's any errors. We will work them here. Any questions about reviewing transactions? All right, let's move on to the next section. Bear with me here. Sierra's driving the slides for me because I'm not good with them. So a lot of the common errors that we get are, for instance, if you had put the last day worked after the effective term date, that can't happen. That'll flow to HR data for us to say, okay, what's going on? And in those situations, we'll reach out to you to say, hey, this is what we're getting. What's the real values? We'll make the change and get it pushed through. And you will see in the status that it says error. So that's how you know if it went through or not. Next slide. Okay, so we've talked about how to submit Smart HR forms. We've talked about how to review them. And then I've kind of quickly shown you how we review transactions on the back end for errors or ones that require further processing or review. Again, if you haven't checked out that data entry guide, all the smart forms are on there, and how to fill those out. Smart HR forms, again, are only top of stack and can only add to job data and personal data, not positions. Smart HR forms have nothing to do with position data. So any questions before I move on, now that you guys had a chance to think about smart HR forms before we kind of leave them for good? Okay. But on. Keep going here. All right. Fluid. So how to add, update job, position, and personal data. Again, you've got your smart forms, but now we're going to talking about how to add it through job data, how to do job data corrections, and then the necessary approvals or reviews that we'll have for each of those steps. Job data will take about 45 minutes. Job data corrections, 15, give or take. We'll take probably a break, and then we'll finish off with the position and personal data towards the end. So again, keep in mind the 3 definitions that we're working with today: job data, position data, personal data. We're going to focus now on job data. Of course, I said this earlier, but it's always good to review that fluid is the squares on the home desktop. In 9.2, there are now we call fluid job data. There is still classic job data, the way you're used to going today through the navigational bar. However, that is being deprecated or going away from PeopleSoft. They've given us the fluid job data. And so for a time period of about a year, we're going to have this fluid job data and the classic job data. So with the implementation of 9.2, we have said that we would like everybody to use the new way, since we know the old way is going away. Classic job data, as you're used to seeing today through the add, update information, will be viewable for you. But again, PeopleSoft is taking that away in about a year or so with the next upgrade. So we want to make sure everybody understands to start using fluid job data. Slightly different looks, as you'll see as we get into the demonstration, but it has a little bit more customizational and workflow tied to it. With fluid job data, you'll need to make sure that you guys know your action reason codes for the job transaction you're trying to get performed. At the end of that data entry guide, we have listed all the action reason codes and when they're used and the index. Once that transaction's been submitted through fluid job data, then it'll flow to HR data for review. And we will definitely do spend a lot of time in the fluid job data today. All right, next slide. So these are the tiles that are on the Workforce Administrator page. As you can see, the one we're going to be talking about today is called Manage Job. That is how they call it fluid job data or manage job, so one and the same. Next slide. You will use this to do promotions, pay rate changes, leave of absence, and anytime you need to add a row or correct a row on job data, you will go through Manage Job Data. Next slide. The search feature for job data has been improved and changed. We have a lot more search features for job data. Once you search for that employee, possible name matches will appear below. You select the employee that you want to update, and it'll take you to the next screen. Here you have the option to create a new job action with that green button at the top you see there. So it'll show you the most recent row, and that's what's being displayed here. And I'm going to show this again when we demonstrate it. You can click a new job row. Next slide. It'll ask you the action reason, the effective date. Don't change regulatory region. That's all stated in our data entry guide. And then the business unit, don't change that. That's based upon already coming from the employee. So just change the top 4. Make sure if you don't know the action reason codes to use, go to that data entry guide. You can also look them up if you don't know the actual codes themselves. All right, next slide. There are a plethora of action reason codes. I will tell you for 9.2, There are not more action reason codes, there are actually less action reason codes. We've gotten rid of a few. I will tell you that there is one action reason code to bring to your attention that we have split out the action reason code of transfer to from LTD into two separate action reason codes now. So now it'll be a transfer to LTD and a transfer from LTD. Other than that, there's no major changes to action reason codes, and they're all the same. I will tell you, for those that you know, family status changes will no longer be on job data. Because benefit events for centralized agencies and centralized benefits are triggered through employee actions, through employee self-service, those will trigger benefit events, not adding a row to job data. So you will no longer see family status changes on job data. All right, next slide. Okay, so this example, they pick bonus and they're doing a reason code of P for P lump sum bonus. So again, you got to add both to submit a transaction. Then you hit that continue button at the top right. What that does then is PeopleSoft allows you to create an activity guide. Today on job data, you are used to seeing tabs across the top for job data. In 9.2, it's taken those tabs and just immediately moved them to the left and created what we call an activity guide, where it'll guide you through the changes. This allows for us to customize the navigation you take based upon the action reason code selected. We haven't done any customizations around that, so the activity guide is the same right now, no matter what action reason code you pick. But in the future, we could customize it. For example, if you did a pay ADJ or pay adjustment, you would only have to update. You'd only see the comp tab, and that's it. So the system for fluid job data allows for a lot more customization to make it easier on us. But the activity guide that we've created is the same as it is today in classic job data, and we'll see that when we get into it. Again, anything with the asterisks, it's required. This is a quick view of fluid job data. Again, you will see that instead of tabs, we have the menu options on the left. Every tab is over there with additional few new choices that we will get into in the demonstration. But like, for instance, the first one here is work location. That's the first tab in classic job data. All right, next slide. Okay. So we're going to hit all of this again. Let me get my share my screen. I'm going to hit my home button here. Okay, so I am going to make sure that I'm on the Workforce Administrator page. Here is my fluid tile for managed job. I will click that. Yes.
I think I might have had a little delay, but can you show them, if you hit home, what they will default to and then where to go change to the Workforce Administrator, please?
Sure. So I'm gonna hit the home button here. And mine is defaulting to Manager Self-Service. So I'm going to make sure to select Workforce Administrator. Okay. Here you will see Managed Job. This is, or what we call fluid job data. We'll get into position later on, but at that tile, you'll notice that tile is also here. I'm going to click Manage Job. And you will see here is the search options. So I'm going to pick, let me grab an employee. Because I only have one option, it takes me to the next screen. What you will see here is the last row from job data. And I'm going to explain to you what happens when we upgrade from 9.1 to 9.2. Every position and every job employee or job record that's active and termed within the past few years will get what we call a conversion row. You will see this here. A conversion row is added to position and employees to bring through all the new values that we need to have that employee have in order to meet the 9.2 requirements. For example, today in 9.1, we only have company SOI. This conversion row will now place employees in appropriate companies based upon our 9.2 rules. So this right here is our conversion row. When we go live, this is in a test environment. When we go live, this will be as of 5.1. I'm going to show some more search options here because I think this is kind of important. I used employee ID to search. Had I searched by name, now who am I logged in as? That's the question. Probably a few. If there are more than one choices from what you searched on, you will see them down below here. Find the employee that you're trying to update and hit continue or the arrow. This individual is terminated, and here's the last row. I'm going to go back to my search results because I want to show you guys one more thing. I clear my search results. You will have two buttons here, include history and correct history. Right now, I'm going to include history, and I will show you how to correct history later on. For right now, I'm going to search by my employee ID again and click include history. Now you will see that not only do I have that conversion row, I can see all previous rows in chronological order, newest to oldest, going back for that employee. These are the quick synopsis for each row. If you want to view the details of any of those rows, you can click the arrow button here. It takes a second. Maybe. So for that row, then it appears this way with just some drop-down sections to view that row data. This is from 2020, the pay rate change, the GSA we had. You can also click back and forth through these arrows. Next and previous. I'm going to go back to the employee. So I want to talk about creating a job action. So my last date was 4/3. You can create a job action anytime after that date. So I'm going to pick, let's do a pay adjustment on, we'll do 4/11 as an example. We'll click continue. And this is fluid job date again. Now my menu is on the left. This is called the activity guide. So basically instead of tabs, we have this now. This should be very similar to what you do today in data entry. You just make the necessary changes that you need. You can navigate through these by clicking on the tabs on the left or the menu options, or by clicking next. If you need to override the positions, here's your override button, which will allow you to override what's on the positions. This should be used on rare occasions. Everything here should be, I'm going to go next. If I was changing position numbers, you put that new position in there. Here is the job information tab. I will tell you that in 9.2, we have some new employee classifications. I would specifically like to point out judicial. We have some prosecuting attorney EMPL classes. These new EMPL classes are used for eligibility rules. So you want to make sure you know when you need to select the appropriate classification, and these are in the data entry guide. I'm going to click next. Here's the labor information. And keep going. We still have this available to you to view. You probably don't need to change anything on this, but it's good information. And again, if I don't want to skip over it, I can. You don't have to go through each tab. Here is the salary plan grade. You will not be changing those because those are tied to the job code, but it is available for you to view. I will tell you that for instance, this employee, here's my compensation division information. I'm doing a pay adjustment, so I'm going to adjust this employee's pay. Should look very familiar to what you did today with data entry. I'm going to do a 10% increase pay. I have to make sure that I click calculate compensation, and it will then update the information up above. Brandy brought up a good point. What you do on job data today now affects payroll. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've had some agencies just go to GX and do pay adjustments there and never touch PeopleSoft. That can't happen. Because now pay changes have to happen in PeopleSoft. They have to be timely. You have to be cognizant not only of what effective date you've chosen, but when you were entering it. Because if payroll is already run for this period, it's not going to be affected till the next paycheck. So please be very mindful of when you're doing change the system, the effective date, and the date you're doing the data entry into the system. I'm going to click next. Just like in the smart form, there are new pay groups. The tax location code, very similar. Absence managed pay groups. I'm doing a pay adjustment. I'm not changing any of these. I'm going to move on. This is the employment data. You guys may recall using these pages for the company seniority date. I will tell you, you will not change anything on this tab. 492. We have created a new tab called Adjusted Service Dates that I will get to. But for this one here, we've just carried this forward. So Alan, when you do pay increases in here, you're done. You don't need to send a PPAF to anywhere because we won't have PPAFs. You won't have to, this will automatically send triggers to payroll. You'll see that when we get done here. So I'm on benefit program. You will not be changing anything on here, but there are various batch groups. I'm going to hit next.
Hey, Jeff.
Okay. Yes.
You do have a question about if a pay adjustment happens in the middle of a pay period.
Oh, yeah.
That one is a big deal for timing. So in this specific scenario where you have an employee receiving a pay adjustment in the middle of a pay period, as long as you have entered that pay adjustment with an effective date, for whatever that is, prior to payroll starting, then there's no issue. Payroll will get that data from job data and it will apply the money appropriately for how your person is paid. But if you do it after the fact, there are some additional steps that would need to be taken because we wouldn't go back from a payroll perspective and pull that data if you've done it after the effective date of change. Does that make sense?
Did that answer your question? Yeah.
And we typically, right now, the schedule for payroll is that we would create pay sheets on the Monday of after the pay period ends. So when we're starting to process, so as long as you have all of your job data transactions that are effective for that pay period in by that Friday, then you wouldn't have any issues. Yes, Pam, we'll get a general schedule out to you before go live. We just had a conversation yesterday about what that might look like. We're kind of doing some back and forth.
We have a general idea, right?
We definitely know when batch processes will run, and then we have to fill in the people part. So
yep, people part. All right. Any more questions before I talk about adjusted service dates. Awesome time here. Because discussion is definitely what we want today, guys, because I know this is a lot of information, it's hitting you fast, but discussions are even better.
Hey, Jeff, it's Pam. So we do have to change the benefits service date because it drives something in benefits. And I know this is not necessarily applicable to everybody, but do you want that handled just as a communication with you and your team? Is that going to be the best way?
Was that not on the adjusted service dates tab here, Pam?
I don't think it is. I think it's just on it was just on the tab that you were on. It's on the adjusted service dates page, I believe. Oh, no, I don't think it is on the adjusted, it's the new page. I think it's on the other.
It's on the employment data tab.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. And that's only for you and maybe 2 other groups, right, Pam?
Right. Yeah. It's just when we appoint troopers. It's not a very frequent event.
So I'll bring this up again. It's very important to know for your business unit what fields you're going to be required to update for your rules, your unique situations. And this is a prime example for Pam. So thank you, Pam. All right, Hannah Rosenberg asked a question about the data and page numbers be added to the bottom of the pages for quick references. I think we can get that done. If it's not already, we'll make sure to do that. We've got a lot of pages now, that data entry guide, it's getting extensive. Okay. All right, so this new tab or menu option is called Adjusted Service Dates. This tab was created out of the need from several different modules, not just core HR. In 9.1 today, though, I will tell you for company seniority date, the date that we use to calculate your service years with the state government, that date was not effective dated, which means if we made a change to that date, to your company seniority, we did not retain the previous date or that historical information. What this tab does now is it will retain all changes to your company seniority date, so we know not only who changed the date, but why and how. Also, this tab will automatically calculate company seniority date, so we do not have to calculate it on an Excel sheet going forward. So I'm going to describe what happens to this page going forward. You will notice on this page right now, we have this conversion row. If I click dates, you will see our current date information that we have for that conversion row is effective 4/3/22, and our company seniority date is here on July of 2015. What will happen is at any time from this point going forward, any job data row where the action reason code necessitates a change to the company seniority date, you will see a row 2 here. So for instance, if I had an employee going intermittent to regular, I will have another row here with number 2, and this date for company seniority date would automatically show a new date. I would still see the 7/13 on row 1. Row 2 would now have the new dates based upon the job data row. So the rows on adjusted service dates will match the job data row. I will state, however, that if the company seniority date is currently not accurate, this will not go back and automatically fix all company seniority dates. This will just calculate changes from the conversion going forward. Therefore, if we at later time discover that our current company seniority date we have in the system is not accurate, we can override and make those changes here and submit them to HR data for review. Any questions so far? That's totally new concept here.
So do we do that override or does state personnel?
You can do the override and submit to us. And we will probably just double check the numbers or make sure it looks good and not just all of a sudden 40 years. But But that is definitely how agencies will be able to submit and make corrections to that company's seniority date going forward. Any other questions about this so far? Okay, and I will show you, there's a counter here, years, months, days. If I show all, it'll show me all of the, I still have overrun, I'll turn that off. And then of course, there's a comment section here. So if you make those changes and you want us to let us know why, or if the future person comes back and looks at employee and says, hey, why did so-and-so change this date on override? Put those comments in there as to why. Anytime you see a comments box, fill it out. Especially in 9.2. I cannot emphasize that enough. So I'm doing a pay adjustment for Elise. I'm going to leave this alone. But here are the new, I guess, automated calculations for company seniority date. All right. No questions? I'm going to move on. On job data, we have a new attachment section. For agencies subject to SHC, for instance, might attach that SHC approval here. To, for instance, I'm doing a pay adjustment for that. I can attach that email that says, hey, you are authorized to do that pay adjustment. I'll attach it here. So anytime you guys are adding things to job data rows and there's an beyond SHC, there might be some other small situations where you want to add an attachment as to why an action's happened for future reference. Here's where you'll do so. Click next. New to 9.2, we now have a validate button or a validate menu option. What this will do is this will run your changes and check for errors and warnings. See if I get any. This should be hit every time. Mine validates it is successful. I will go back here and let's go. If I were to go back to the salary and comp and I were to change this down to, I'll copy this real quick here, $100 bi-weekly. That is below the min of the range. When I come down to validate, if I hit validate, I should get an error message. Make sure you're hitting that validate button. Warnings are soft, errors are hard. Warnings will still let you submit to HR data where we're going to see that warning and wonder what's going on. I'm going to go back to my comp and fix this. Any questions about the validate tab? Okay. I'm going to click next. The last tab on fluid job data is also new. What this menu option choice does is it shows you the summary of changes. I'm doing a new row, so the as of date is not available. It shows me that I've changed annual rates and the corresponding rates. So from, like, for instance, now here's my new annual rate of 58,265. This is the same view HR data will get when they review transactions. It's basically like Word when they track your changes. It just tracks what you've changed. So that way it can be quickly reviewed to make sure any change in values won't cause payroll issues. Any questions about this? Instead of printing off PPAS today or AS47s, this can be printed off and put in employee files.
So Jeff, because the combined standard hours were 0 and now are 37. So in the system prior to your change, the hours weren't in there?
It's a new field that we're not using.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
We still have the the standard work hours is a different, this is combined standard, not standard work hours. We use standard work hours. So for like EDC uses 40, that's not changing. Good question. Okay, I'm gonna hit and submit. Now, because I'm logged in as myself, it auto approved, but here's where you would see that would route to HR data. So because I've already approved by being part of the HR data group, it's already been approved by me. I can go through classic job data that you guys are used to looking at now and see the change there. So here is my pay rate change, pay adjustment.
I have a question. If you're doing a pay rate change for a W-2 only employee and you're just giving them a flat, like from $7.25 to $7.98 an hour change, can you just put in the new $7.98 change, or do you have to put it in as a percentage?
Nope, you, just like today, you can do, I'll do another row. I'll quickly show that. Give me a second. Come on. So I did changes, but by all means, you could go in here and change the comp rate, or you could put, for instance, if it's hourly, you can definitely put that, if it should be showing hourly. I change it, but if it's hourly, you could put it in at 15 versus 16. Absolutely. You just want to make sure you hit that calculate compensation.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about fluid job data?
How would you change pay in a retro or in a for a previous pay period?
We'll talk about that in the next section. We talk about corrections.
Thank you.
Right now, I'm just adding new rows.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, I will tell you that once you've submitted a row, there's a green arrow right here where you can see the approval chain without having to go into the row, but I also have a note section. So I want to talk about when to use this note section. Fluid job data only allows one in progress row at a time. So for instance, if you have submitted a pay adjustment to be reviewed and you need to do another row, the system will not allow you until the first row has been reviewed. There are certain situations that we need to add two rows at the same time, returning from leaves, for example. What you'll do is you'll enter in one row, come back in here, add notes, and say, HR data, please enter in a second row for this. Anything else that you need to communicate to HR data about that row, you can put in the note section. Hit save, and that's all there is to it. So as you can see, this row is completed. If this were in progress, when HR data goes to review, we will always see these notes here. And that'll tell us if another row needs to be added, or it'll let us know what you're trying to do. So if you happen to miss a field or not change a field, and there's a note there and it tells us what you're trying to do, we'll see those notes and it'll help us further help you. So this is something new that we have notes today, but not as easily accessible or viewable. So I want to make sure that if as needed, you guys can add notes to each row. Any questions about adding notes? So again, if you need to add more than one row at a time, add one of the rows and then put in the notes, tell us what else you need. And the reason for that is if you had 2 in-progress rows for salary adjustments, the system doesn't know how to carry forward and calculate them both at the same time, for example. So that's why the system only allows for 1 in-progress row at a time. Now, let's suppose I enter in the in-progress row on an employee. You log in through Fluid Job Data, and you will come to this screen. You will see in progress as well. So you can see in progress rows that have been entered in by other individuals. Let's see what else. Are there any questions before I move on? Take a look in the chat here. Okay, so got questions regarding how long will an action be in progress? Good question. In 9.2, we would love to say that they're going to happen right away, but we're definitely going to try to get through them as quickly as possible in HR data to review transactions. Our turnaround time, hopefully, our goal is within one business day, but it may be 2 business days for a while until we can get up to speed. But eventually, we'd like to see these approved within 1 business day. And then it said, if we aren't validating the data requested in a note, how do we verify it? What do you mean by that, Tina? I'm not quite sure I'm following that question.
That's what I'm asking is, how do we, like if we would print that screen to put in their employee file. So if we're entering it in a note, what do? Would you recommend we print the note to, show in the employee file that we requested that action? You know how the verify did the validation, was it the validation that did the side by side?
So you're talking about the summary tab with the orange circles?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So you can, but at any point too, you can come back into, for instance, if you want us to add another row, you can come back into that row here, and you could print this as well. I think the summary is at the end of this. Let me look. So for instance, had we added this for you, you could print it here.
Oh, so we'd come back to this summary. Okay.
Yeah, at any time, you can come in here and print for the employee file the summary from, so any row that's in job data, at any time, you can click this arrow and see the summary of changes for any row.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that answer it? Any other questions? All right, I'm going to return to search. And Sierra, do we have some slides for a correction?
I believe so. Do you want me to share the PowerPoint?
Yeah, let me close out. So job data corrections are probably one of the new exciting areas, especially for non-centralized agencies. Today, all job data corrections had to come down to job data. Now we're going to talk about how that has been put in your hands as well. So in order to complete a job data correction, when you do the search, to search for the employee, you'll want to check the checkbox that said include history or correct history. When you click correct history, it will show you all the rows for that employee. Next slide. So here's where those buttons are at. new buttons for you guys today. When you do that, it'll show all the rows, and you'll notice here on the right, there's now the edit buttons will become available. It's not just the caret to show you the row, but also the edit button. All right, hit next. So we're gonna get in and show you how you can do corrections. Let me share my screen. So I'm gonna stick with this employee that we worked on. I'm gonna go change that pay rate change, say it was the wrong percent. Actually, I'm gonna go pick somebody new because I want to grab somebody. Let's grab somebody. Do like a PP. I'll pick somebody new. I've got my correct history. This person has 2 instances. So I need to know which one to select. So let's take a look at this one. This one is a non-employee, so I don't want. Sorry, guys, my internet cut out. There we go. I'm going to select employee record of 1. Select that one. Here we go. So now I've got the employee record. I've got the rows for this employee. Here's my conversion row that everybody's going to get. But I see here we had a pay rate change for that GSA back in January. Effective date 12/26, but it was updated 1/7. Let's take a look at that. I want to edit that row. Because I clicked correct history, I can then click edit. Gives you a little bit of a warning here that says, hey, if you go change this row, it's also going to affect this row. And that changes may need to be made to this row as well. I will click continue. Here's the current information from that row. I don't want to change the action reason code, but I could if I wanted to. But for that 12/26 effective date, I'm going to leave it with this action reason code, and I'm going to click continue. As you can see, we are still back in the fluid navigational paths here. I'm going to go to that compensation tab. And this person, I'm going to see what they had. They had a 5%. Let's suppose that should have been a 6. Change it, calculate it, go down to my validate. If I have some attachments that pertain, an email chain pertain to why this got changed, I might attach it. We'll validate it. Validation successful. I will click next. I have my summary tab. So here you will see that it's got the effective date and that I'm actually changing this information. Notice I don't have action reason code because that's not changing, so it's not a choice here. But the change percent went from this 5039 to 6. If I hit submit.
I do want to give a warning here that because you are in correction mode, there's not a trigger from this. So I know Jeff will talk a lot about what triggers things downstream. If you're doing a pay adjustment and you are not doing a new effective dated row, there are additional steps that you would need to take unless this happened immediately. Like if you learned, oh, this was entered incorrectly, you know, in the same time frame and you just had to go correct that, there would probably be no issue. But if you're making a correction without a new effective dated row, we just need to talk about additional steps, especially if you're talking about pay increase or decrease.
Exactly. So again, you're going to hear this a lot. Refer to our data entry guide for references on what other steps need to be taken. So because I'm logged into myself, It all self-approved. However, you'll notice it said, go to job action summary to view the rows marked with an icon. I'm going to show you what that looks like. What that tells us, and it tells HR data when we review, that because this was changed, this row needs to be addressed as well, because this row still has the old pay rate. Didn't automatically carry forward. HR data, when we review this transaction, will carry forward any necessary rows for you. For example, if you do a correction on a job title back here, HR data will have to go in and update those more recent rows with that job code, job title, etc. Are there any questions so far?
Jeff, did you say that HR data will make those corrections in the rows above?
Yes. We will get notified when you review your correction history row. We will know to go ahead and check everything else, especially for corrections, because there's so much that can go wrong if they're not done right. This is just your way to inform us what needs to be corrected, and then we can go from there. Any other questions? Good questions. I'll bring it up again. Make sure, especially if you're doing corrections, add notes, you can review the approval chain, etc. I will bring out that, and I did point this out during fluid job data, and I probably should now too as well in the correction. When HR data is reviewing transactions, we have the option to push back a request. So if we don't have enough information, we will push back that job data row to you to rework. You will see that because this status will change to rework, and the person that submitted the row will get a workflow email message notifying them that that employee row that was submitted has been pushed back for rework. You will want to look for notes that may have come from us on that rework to see why we may have pushed back that request if we didn't have enough information to complete it. Any questions about rows being pushed back? Because we utilize workflow emails, I would emphasize, make sure that in the new system, when it comes online, you got your work email in there as a workflow user. Any questions on include or correct history? A lot to take in, so I'm sure I'm happy to talk about smart forms if someone just now thought of a question. Okay, we'll take a quick 5-minute break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about approvals and a few more small close-up topics. In the meantime, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I will try to get them answered when we come back.
Okay, so we're wrapping up the last 5-minute break. Jeff, let me know once you're ready to go ahead and get started again.
We're a little ahead of schedule, so we're just giving you folks a few more minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, let's get going here. I think we've given everybody a few. Let's dive into the next section. Next section is position data. For position data, again, there's a fluid tile for it. It will be on the Workforce Administrator home screen and the tile will be called Position Management. Looks like this. It'll be right next to the managed job. So you've got managed position, managed job. We're going to be talking about how to update position information in 9.2. The managed position title will allow you to add, update, and view position information through this tile. It's similar to how we do in fluid job data. There are 3 fields that everyone will have access to update on position data. That is the department, location, and reports to. Those 3 fields will be the 3 fields you will be allowed to update through fluid position management. The search is a little different than it is today, but you'll just need to know the position number and the criteria in order to bring up the PCN that you want to view or edit. Next. Once you find that PCN, you can then just select by clicking on that row to bring up that PCN. So not much to it. We're going to dive right in. Let me share my screen. I'm going to try to log in as a user. Let's see here. We have to switch databases. Yeah, let me switch databases. Bear with me 1 second here. I need to switch databases for a user. I don't have a user like that. We are in test environments right now. There we go. All right, so I'm on the home page, my default page. I'm going to change this to Workforce Administrator. I'm going to go to Position Management, Manage Positions. And here is that search feature. I will go grab a PCN, search for it. Then here's my position number. I will click on it. What you'll notice for positions is you can view all of the historical rows. You'll just not be allowed to edit. In order to change information on the position, you will click this plus sign. So for fluid job data, you had create job action, it was green button. For position, you will have this plus button here. I'll click that. I will enter in my reason code. So let's do a location change. I will hit continue. And it has brought up my activity guide and menu choices on the left. If you notice, all of the fields will be grayed out except for those 3 fields: department, location, and reports to. On position, there is a slight change in 9.2 where the current incumbent is viewable here through this link. Instead of a tab today, it's just a quick link. Otherwise, for the most part, position information is exactly as it is today. So I'd bring a location change. So I'll change counties here. I'll hit next. Everything will be grayed out, but this is also how you can view position information. There's attachments if you need attached attachments. Here's the additional information for the perf fund, or in-person fund, I should say. How you link to job data, current incumbent, just like today. And then, of course, we've got a summary page prior to submission that will allow you to see the changes that are being made. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I got this PC. I'm going to hit submit. It's going to update anybody that's an incumbent. Yes, that's fine. And it's done. If I go to position, I'm going to go to manage, create update position through classic. And if I click on that PCN again, here it is, and it's approved. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that when you add a new row, as long as the reason code you choose is either department change, location change, or reorg, those 3 reason codes, I'll say them again: department change, reorg, or location change. Those 3 action codes are set to bypass approvals. If you choose any other reason code, like for instance, if I did title change, even though you're only able to update those 3 fields, because you chose title change, it's going to run out to HR data for review. And you don't want that. So make sure on fluid position, you are choosing the appropriate reason code that skips HR data. That's reorg, location, and department. And to bring up the excellent point that Alan Ferguson made in the chat, yes, if you do reorg, you can change all three at once to whatever. Are there any questions so far before I keep going? Okay, I'm going to read back out of this. So I'm going to go back to my home screen. I'm going to go to Workforce Administrator, Position Management, and Manage Positions. That's the path. You can also search by Approved or Frozen, which we don't use Frozen Proposed, but that's on here. But reports to PCNs are sometimes helpful to find who's reporting to who. Again, we will still have classic position data. It will just be view only. So if I go to the navigational bar and go to our classic position data, well, maybe organizational development, position management, do that update. I think I've got it turned off in this person environment. You can still view position data this way. Person I'm logged in, that says it turned off. Let me see if I got this. Dang, test environment. And then this will still be viewable. My view is not right now because I'm in the test environment, but this will still be viewable with your classic view of position data. Okay. Any questions on positions and updating those three fields? Because correction mode is not turned on for position management, fluid position, any row you add for changes will have to be on or after the last row. So for instance, on this PCN, I added 421. If I want to add another row, it'll have to be on or after 421. Only the compensation division and HR data will have correction access, the ability to create new positions, clone new positions, or change all the additional fields. If you change information on position data for those three fields of location, department, or reports to, and the employee is on override, you will need to remember to also go to fluid job data and make the change there. Any questions about that? Now's the time, guys, because next 2 weeks it's going to be do or die.
So Jeff, I apologize. I had to step away just for a quick second. In 9.1, when we make the position, when we update the position data, we can actually access job data, the job data record by going in through the incumbent. Is that possible, or do we have to go back then to the job side to do the update if it's on override?
I believe it is possible, but I would probably the preferred method would go back into fluid job data then.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good question.
Jeff, is it possible to have you show that screen one more time? What I'm thinking is we have to go in during the pay period to enter changes that take effect the first day of the following pay period. Is there an effective date on that screen?
For positions?
Yes.
Yes, I think so. Here, we'll do it again. Let me pick a different PCN here. This one's vacant. I'll grab a vacant PCN, but let's see here. So here's the PCN here. I'll click that. That's the one I want to change. When you hit that plus button, because remember, positions have a plus button, job data have that green correct create job action row. here it's a plus button. When you create that, the first thing that pops up is that date.
Okay. And we can change that.
You can change that as
Okay,
long
thank
as
you.
it's on or after the last row.
Okay, thank you.
I believe if I do on, do it right. It'll automatically change that effective sequence to 1 because I've already got a 0 here.
So
Any
Jeff,
question? Go ahead.
if we had to do one, there are times when we may get incorrect information from one of our managers. And in 9/1, we have to wait until the next day because we are not able to change the effective date. So if we had to, I'm not saying it's ideal, but if we had to, we could go in and do one the same date and the system will automatically effective sequence it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
However, the ideal way to do that would be to reach out to HR data to make the correction.
Correction. Okay.
That way we don't have all those rows on position.
Gotcha. Thank you.
If you need correction changes to positions, you'll need to work with compensation division or submit a ticket to HR data to make those corrections that you need to be happening. The compensation division, when they click this plus button, will now have full access like this to position data. When the compensation division makes changes per SHCs or whatever reasons comp wants to do that, then it'll flow to HR data for Stephanie Bradley review before they get created. That's kind of like an FYI for you guys. But the compensation division has full access to position data. So if you need a correction from comp division, can submit it, can also work with you guys to get those corrected, in addition to tickets to HR data. Kim Logan asked a question about contact information. Yes, page 3 of the guide should have all our information, phone numbers, email addresses, faxes, right at the top of that guide. I'll double check to make sure it's updated, but yes, definitely reach out to us. I will tell you that today, because we don't have smart forms in 9/1, today, because all of our transactions are for new contractors, all that's coming to HR data with IoT tickets. All those transactions now are going to be shifted through the system. So HR data will not be getting, I'm going to say 10% of what we normally had of IoT tickets. So truly the IoT tickets that we do get for issues, errors, problems, rare occasions of corrections, we should be able to get to those within the hour or two. And our goal is to have those processed within 24 hours because we are not having to do all the data entry in HR data. We are truly trying to review and fix issues that come up. So I do want to encourage you guys for issues and problems to submit IoT tickets, especially when we go live, because that we're definitely going to be paying attention to that for that HR data inbox that we use in IoT tickets. You'll be able to see what we're doing with the tickets. We can communicate through those tickets, as well as make sure you'll be able to make sure we're working on your issue. And then if it's a really immediate need, then absolutely pick up the phone and pull the fire alarm. I will tell you from mass changes, and we've talked about job data, and I'm not usually when it comes to positions, where you may have to change 40, 50 positions at a time. If you don't have the time to go in and do these all 50 positions, reach out to us. We might be able to assist you with that when it comes to large quantities, especially if you're starting 100 or more PCNs or 100 more employees. Reach out to us and we'll see if there's a quicker way rather than going in one by one. Prime example is contractors. A lot of times we get requests for huge numbers of contractors. We're willing to work with agencies to try to figure out the best method to get mass data into the system rather than through one at a time through these methodologies. Any other questions about position data or stuff that we've already talked about? Okay, we'll move on. Sierra, what's the next section?
Should be approvals, I believe. Let me see. Bear with me as it loads. It's
I appreciate it. We're back and forth here.
personal data and then approvals. We'll close out with approvals.
Okay, personal data. So the HR data administrators in HR data will be the only ones that have direct access to personal data going forward. The smart HR templates are created to update personal data, but keep in mind employees will be the ones that really should be updating all of this information. In 9.2, we are turning on some employee self-service options that you should know about, so that way employees can update their ethnicity in 9.2, they can't today. They can update their disability information and military status in 9.2, where they can't do that today. So when it comes to personal data, we want to encourage employees to do it through employee self-service. We have the access as HR individuals for situations that fall outside of that capability to do the smart forms. But then for everything else, HR data is the one that will have direct access on that manage or modify a person. Any questions about that? Okay, moving on. I don't think there's much to demonstrate with that, so we're going to skip this, Sierra. Let's keep moving on here because we kind of approvals, or as I like to call it, make sure we're not turning off someone's paycheck reviews. Most actions that we talked about today, or that we do today for job, position, and personal data will require an additional review just to make sure that we're using those new 9.2 values, that it's not going to take someone out of the eligibility criteria that we've built in for the benefit plans. Any transaction that's in the pending status, make sure you guys know how to review. We've shown you guys how to review pending transactions on job data and on personal data. Is there any other section that you guys would like to see again when it comes to reviewing approvals? Or reviewing pending transactions, I should say. Okay, we are way ahead of schedule, you guys, today. You guys are not asking nearly as many questions as I thought you would. I'll open it up for concern. Is there any area that people think they're going to have a hard time with? Or an area of concern? No. Okay.
So Jeff, in the chat, there's a question
Yeah.
about, okay.
You want to answer that one, Brandy? Because I'm not familiar with what's not being turned on live.
Are you asking about like the staggered rollout of self-service items, or are you saying what's different between 9.1 and 9.2?
No, I'm asking about that staggered rollout.
Okay, so many of the self-service items will be available like you have today, as far as updating address and such. Those items that will be delayed, in no particular order, are benefits life events. For self-service, there's a dates issue with how we're doing benefits, so it's going to take a couple of pay periods for us to be able to shake out those dates. I don't know a better way to say it. So for the first month or so, the benefits teams, whether that's centralized or non-centralized, will be managing those life events like they do today, as far as, receiving that information from employees. And then sometime after June 12th, they will be available for self-service. So there'll be a communication that goes out to all employees about that. We also will be delaying or not rolling out initially direct deposit self-service or the tax forms for self-service. And that's just because we're trying to get some multi-factor authentication into the system so that we are protecting employees' personal information. So because of all the timing of this, we couldn't do that at go live. So once we get multi-factor authentication in for the state, maybe, you know, a few weeks after go live, then we will send out a communication about direct deposit and available tax forms for those things to be added to the list. I think that's all I know about. Are there other transactions that you are wondering about?
Well, yeah, and it's more related to payroll, so I don't know if you can answer it. But I
Sure.
am some workflow in the absence management that wasn't going to be functional. I think that was the ability for it to flow to reports to for approval or something.
So we, I am not sure when we plan to do that. That was more around a change management effect. So basically, I think what you're asking is when we're utilizing absence management, originally when we talked to folks, we were saying that you would request an absence and then that would flow to your manager for approval. And then once that approval would happen, it would basically post to your time card and hit payable time so that you can be paid for that. Because that's such a big change for the state, we've taken a pause on that. There's no date as far as when we're going to implement that. I think once we become stable and we start talking to agencies about their level of engagement there, we'll set a date for that. Right now, we're trying to investigate if that can be done by the business unit or by the agency so that we could have folks, you know, pick and choose, but we don't have a solidified date for that right now. So the process when we go live will be that when employees request that absence time for general absences, extended leaves are a little different. But for general absences like vacation, sick, and personal, those will just be, they will be auto approved in PeopleSoft. So what that means for you and your agency is that you still have to follow whatever guidance you have around those requests internally before your employee would actually put that into the system or before your manager would put that in on behalf of an employee. So if you guys, you know, send calendar invites or emails, or if you have a system in each agency where you do those approvals, that will need to continue until we make a change to that, because once they put it in PeopleSoft, it will just look like it is auto approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brandy. We had a quick question that I thought I would just bring up to the group here. When PeopleSoft is down, the main reason that we cannot do hires during that period is we couldn't give access. You know, in order to give access to the systems and doors, you got to have an employee ID. We realize, though, that there are going to be terminations or individuals may have to be let go during the downtime of PeopleSoft. If that situation arises, reach out to IoT or any necessary security teams to remove access elsewhere. When PeopleSoft comes back online, you will be able to enter in that termination with that effective date.
In the example that's in the chat, if you have an employee terming on May the 13th, you will be able to get into the system prior to that to add that, because we are looking to come back up on the 10th at some point. We'll send out communication to everyone as to when you can get in and start to get some of those transactions flowing. But if you had someone that was terming in this example on the 13th, you would be able to get into 9.2 prior to that term and enter that.
There's one area that was not covered today because it's more along the lines of manager self-service that I want to bring to your attention as HR individuals. In manager self-service, there are 3 options, and Brandy, help me out here because it's still new to me, is location change and terminate an employee, correct?
Yes, you have those.
Right.
And reports to change, right?
And reports to where managers will be able to request those changes through manager self-service. When those managers do that, it will route that request via the business unit to anybody in that business unit that has data entry access. You guys, HR. So if you have data entry access, you will be in job data or position data, you will be getting those manager self-service requests coming to you for review. If you hit approve, it will hit position and job data together. But those approvals from manager self-service flow to who knows who to flow to whoever has job data entry access. You will get emails notifying you when that manager submitted that request, but I want you guys to be aware that that is a new feature in 9.2.
And one caveat to that also is it's kind of a shared work list. So depending on what your what the transaction is, if you look at that approval workflow, it may go to several of you. So if one person acts on that before you were to get in, it wouldn't be there for you anymore because that person has already approved it and moved it down the line. So my guess is you guys have these all outlined based on different criteria so that you know which ones are yours to work.
Yeah, thank you, Brandy. Yes, you're exactly right. So that manager self-service request to change a location to terminate an employee will flow to the HR individuals in your agency that have access to job data, but it doesn't require approval of all, just one. Let's see, what else do I got? Okay, any other questions? Sierra, let's move on. So real recap, talked about how to update job data, position, personal data, downstream impacts. I think we brought it up a few times, but I think Brandy and I can't emphasize this enough. Timeliness of transactions are important. The effective dates you use are important because they cause triggers to payroll, and then payroll will be reaching out to you and say, what are you doing if it's something's crazy? So please be mindful of timeliness of data entry into PeopleSoft. Next slide. Next steps.
Jeff, I'm not seeing any slides if we're supposed to be seeing slides.
Oh. Here.
Is anyone else having that issue?
I see the next step slide, but it's just the picture. Is that what you have up, Sierra?
Yep, yeah, next slides. We're wrapping up at this point. So just want to remind you all that this presentation recording will be shared after the meeting. We'll also be compiling a document of the questions asked during today's session. We'll be sending those out in a frequently asked questions format at a later date. And just another quick reminder, if you have any outstanding questions to attend the optional virtual question and answer session next week on the 25th.
We do have a couple of more questions. As far as an employee who should no longer have access, Jeff, I think for those folks, we are just doing manual provisioning, right?
Yes. So we just need, I guess we haven't fully changed our process, but for now, I say just do an IoT ticket.
Yeah, it would be a ticket for those folks. And then as far as ESS changes that can affect HR and payroll, from a payroll perspective, they have several queries and such that they will be validating county information. And we have done some customization to like the hiring process to make sure that county is selected correctly and that goes to the tax table. So if you are agency payroll folks on this call, you would also have that training for how to handle those situations. And then Sierra, there's some questions about the session that we're having next week or about questions. I don't know if that invitation has gone out to this group.
No, that invitation has not been sent out yet, so you all should see it soon when we send it out.
So Sierra, if we just sent the centralized one, is that all we've done so far?
I'm not, Latoya may be able to answer that question. She's still online, but I do know that we need to send out the invitation still for the question and answer session on the
I've got one
25th,
on
and
my-
I believe it's combined.
I've got
I-
one.
I do see the invitation. It was sent out. If you don't have the invitation, if you could just reach out to Janetta in SPD and she'll be able to get the invitation to you.
And Latoya, that's supposed to be on the 25th, is that correct?
That is correct.
That is from 10 to 11, if you want to block out your
Yes.
calendar, guys. And it's going to be combined centralized and non-centralized, just because I think it'll be good in case there are still questions out there that overlap.
Kim, I think we can reach out to Janetta and just make sure that everyone that is an attendee on this session gets the invitation. That way she doesn't get 50 emails from you guys. So we'll go ahead and have her add that. If you don't see that updated invitation in the next day or so, then certainly reach out to her. But I'll go ahead and get her on that so that she can get everybody that's on this particular call.
Thank you, Brandy. I like the idea.
Sure.
All right. Any last minute questions for the group? Because we are way on ahead of schedule, which is not a bad thing, but. All right. So we definitely want to, I'm going to reemphasize one last time about that data entry guide. If something's not clear to you, reach out to me or Ashley New, because we had to rewrite that whole data entry guide. And I'm sure there's some areas that probably could be clarified or maybe needs further expansion on it. So as you guys review that data entry guide, if there's anything that you see maybe not accurate, let us know. We're going to keep working on making that the best document we have for 9.2. For Go Live, for those of you, in case I don't talk to you between now and then, we are going to be staying on top of IoT tickets for HR data. So if you have problems after Go Live, Ashley New and I will be on those tickets pretty quickly, and we'll try to help you get whatever you need to be done. If you think of questions after this session, and you prefer not, and you aren't going to be able to attend that Q&A on Monday, reach out to me with your questions, and we will try to get you that answer. If I can't answer, I've got Randy and everybody else. We'll find somebody who can answer your question for you guys. Okay. I want to thank everybody for attending, and wish you all the best of luck. Thank you, guys.